All right, we are back on the Andre Duke Show with Carter Smith. How you doing, Carter?
Doing well, man. Good week so far this week. Getting ready for Notre Dame spring game this weekend. Recapped Ohio State's a little bit so far this week. Just chilling, man. Got in the gym. Got a couple good workouts so far. So just trying to keep it moving, man. How about you?
Oh, can't complain. Doing well. Just got to keep it a moving and a grooving.
Of course, man. Lot to talk about. Richie, yes, I did. A lot to talk about this week as we get into the Notre Dame spring game. So let's jump into it, man. What do you want to start with here?
We can start with the title of the show is
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's fine, man. Riley Leonard. So big
yes,
news
Riley
out
Leonard.
of big news out of South Bend the past few weeks is Riley Leonard is out at Notre Dame for the spring game at least. He's not leaving or anything yet, but the injury has lingered on for a while. Watched Coach Freeman's press conference about it a little. I mean, if I'm Notre Dame, I'm getting concerned. Is he's going through the entire spring, hasn't really taken a rep or anything like that. He keeps saying, he's in there taking mental reps. He's got the headset on. He's going through the steps of each play as if he were out there. But he's had two surgeries, and that injury just keeps lingering, man. And so you look at it, I mean, going into the summer, he's still going to be the projected starter. He's still going to be, because if he's not the starter, really, you're kind of in a bad spot if you're Notre Dame. But how much is this going to impact his ability to be ready and, be ready for that first game against Texas A&M, be ready to go through a 12-game schedule? And what do you do if you're Marcus Freeman if he's not?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest question marks going forward. Is Riley Leonard, is he going to be healthy? It's a very big question that needs to be answered. And with Notre Dame this year, I think having a new offensive coordinator, they're like 74th or 75th in the nation in returning production. One of the other side topics on this that I find um, real interesting is that there's no return starter again, two
Yeah.
years in a row. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Well,
I
Notre Dame's been searching for that answer at quarterback, I don't know, for the past decade plus. I mean, ever since, I mean, they've had guys. Ian Book was a multi-year starter, took them to two playoffs. They've had guys, but Ian Book was never, your prototypical quarterback, and he never was an elite passer or anybody really thought of him as somebody that could lead you to a national title. So pretty much most of Brian Kelly's tenure, and then obviously all of Marcus's, they haven't had that guy at quarterback. Never had him come in and be developed and turn into a 2 or 3 year starter. And they haven't even had the CJ Stroud type quarterback where he sat behind a guy for 2 years, had one great year, and went to the NFL. I mean, they just haven't been able to figure out the quarterback position in a long time. They brought in Sam Hartman last year, who was overall a pretty good quarterback. He had a couple of hiccups and some tough games here and there. And I think they were hoping that Riley Leonard would step in and do the same thing. They got some young kids at quarterback right now that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show that I think they are pretty high on. But the problem right now is if Riley Leonard's not got ready to go week one, or if he's not far enough along in the process, you're looking at a really tough week one game. And I don't know how that offense is gonna handle it, because you're replacing three starters on the offensive line. You're obviously breaking in a new quarterback. He has a lot of experience at Duke, but I think you and I were talking earlier today before the show. He only accounted for 8 touchdowns last year. So, he threw for 4 and ran for 4 before he got injured in the Notre Dame game, at the end of the Notre Dame game. So you don't have a whole lot, going for you on the offensive side of the ball. And if you can't get Riley in there and get him going and get him in sync with his offensive line, get him on time with his receivers, get the exchange with the running backs, get all those little things ironed out, it's going to make for a really sloppy first game, and you can't have that when you're going into Kyle Field at Texas A&M.
I 100% agree with that. I think I've heard Marcus reference the offense is behind the defense, and I'm thinking to myself, some people in other spaces are, they're like, the offense is ahead of the defense, and you hear a lot of rah, 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 go team, go. And I'm concerned from an outsider looking in, just for the simple fact of you have a new offensive coordinator, you have a new starting quarterback, and you have a new starting quarterback 2 years in a row. And your defense is probably going to carry the team this year, and your offensive production that you are bringing in was not very good last year.
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm kind of getting a little concerned listening to Marcus talk press conference after press conference year after year, because there doesn't seem to be the sense of urgency that I want to see from him on this offense. He's a defensive guy. I get that. He's going to always focus on the defense, and he hires people to run the offense. I get that. I understand it. However, as the head coach, CEO of the Notre Dame football program, I need a little more urgency out of you to get this thing figured out. I'm reading comments by Riley Leonard about his progress. And, he says he's taking a faith-based mindset into it, just trusting God's plan for him, which is great. I love that. But at the same time, we need to know that he's going to be there. Now, some of the good news that's come out recently is that he is increasing his practice abilities. He's doing some 7-on-7 stuff. He's getting on the field a little bit more. So those are all good signs and steps in the right direction. But hopefully, as he gets moving towards that, I mean, he's going to have to spend a lot of time outside of practice, and it's got to be voluntary because of the NCAA regulations. But he's got to spend a lot of time with his receivers, getting on the same page. He's got to spend a lot of time with the offensive line, making sure they know his cadence, because right now the offensive line has not taken a snap with him calling out a cadence. And so those are all things that lead to penalties, lead to mental breakdowns, lead to small little issues. A missed time throw can lead to a turnover, which could change the game. Those are all things that as a quarterback coming into a new system and coming into a new opportunity with the program like Notre Dame, those are all red flags for me. I don't like seeing it. I'd much rather have him be much further along. But you can't rush him either and get him injured, in fall camp, and then you're really screwed.
Right. And sorry about that. My
good.
Other light was not plugged in. I think mental reps, all of that sounds really good. All of it sounds like this is going to pan out, and we're doing that. I think Marcus gets wrapped up in that go team go stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has a lot of coach speak in his press conference, does a lot of, but he's a very positive person in general, I believe. So I think it's part of just who he is. He is maybe an eternal optimist. And he's also, he knows more than any of us, obviously. He's in there every day. He's talking to the medical staff. He's talking to the quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator. He's watching Riley. So he might know that Riley, maybe it's out of an abundance of caution. Maybe they could push him faster, but he doesn't feel they need to. And if that's the case, I'm okay with it. I trust that Marcus has an idea of what's best for the program, or at least listens to his offensive coaches that tell him what's best for the program and what's best for the offense. And so if that's the case, okay, I hope you're right. But, this is year 3 now. And Notre Dame is not a place you can waste a lot of time, with losses you shouldn't be losing.
Mm-hmm. And I think the offensive line is also going to be a huge question mark going forward as well, because you got to replace Joe Alt.
Yep. Yeah, the offensive line is definitely on the list of question marks. I think it's funny. I'm closely connected to the Ohio State program and the Notre Dame program, and they have similar question marks going into the season, but at very different levels, in my opinion. The offensive line is a huge question mark for both programs. Notre Dame's returning the 2 guards. They're replacing Joe Alt and I believe both tackles and the center, which I would much rather be replacing guards than tackles and centers. The tackles in the center are much more integral to the pass game and to just overall performance of the line. But they do have 2 solid guards coming back, which helps. And I believe that the guys that are stepping into those other positions have the opportunity to be really good. Notre Dame has a history of producing great offensive linemen. So I'm not shocked. I won't be shocked if the offensive line is not an issue. But you really need to get that entire first unit together to get it cohesive, or else you could have issues all year long. And that's what I want to avoid.
And the O-line is not as much concerning to me. I think it's a question mark, but I feel like signal caller and also throwing this topic in there. Bo Collins, one of the guys that they were raving about that they got out of the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not overly excited that he has not taken, a snap this spring either.
So I believe that was the plan all along, though. He had to finish out his semester at Clemson in order to get the credit that he needed, and so they didn't expect him, I don't believe, to show up before summer. And so now, I mean, that is an issue because he's going to be coming in and he's going to have to learn the offense, which I'm sure he's already gotten the playbook and everything like that. But he's not getting the reps that he needs, and he's stepping into a very crowded wide receiver room. Now, obviously, I think he's one of the better wide receivers in the room, so I think it'll play out where he'll still get on the field and be one of the top 6 or top 4 receivers in that room. But you look at it, you have Jaden Thomas returning, you got Deion Colze, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, KK Smith, and then you have 2 transfers that are already in there in Chris Mitchell and Jaden Harrison. And then you got 3 freshmen that are coming in. Now, Micah Gilbert is a pretty highly touted freshman who's been really impressive this spring so far. But he's young. He's made mistakes. He's a young kid, but he's got big play potential. And then Cam Williams, a freshman, and then Logan Saldate, who is coming in this summer. So I'm not worried about him really competing for anything this year. But you're talking about, 8, 9 guys in there, and Bo Collins is kind of going to be behind the 8 ball. And he's also going to be competing with Jordan Thomas and Deion Colze for that kind of boundary receiver position. So you're going to have 3 of your better receivers all kind of sharing that one position in the boundary on the outside receiver position. Now, I think there's opportunities to flip somebody to the field side and things like that, but they have a pretty good receiver room. There's not a lot of knowns there. They lost some receiver talent. Chris Mitchell is coming in from Florida International. So not a big time program, but he's got 3 years of experience, went for 64 catches, over 1,100 yards and like 8 touchdowns last year. So he's got some potential. And then Jaden Harrison from Marshall, he's more of just a kick return specialist. I mean, he can play some slot receiver and get in there. But yeah, Bo Collins was a really big time get out of the transfer portal. And so I hope he comes in this summer and he's shown that he's been putting in the work in the offseason outside of the program, that he kind of moves into that position flawlessly and can get on the field pretty quickly. Good thing, I guess, if you want to call it a good thing, is he didn't miss a whole lot as far as gaining chemistry with Riley Leonard, right? Because Riley hasn't been practicing either. So the other receivers aren't going to be that far ahead of him as far as chemistry with the quarterback. So they're all going to be kind of starting from square one on that. I mean, I'm sure Riley's been throwing to the guys after practice and things like that, doing what he can. But yeah, I mean, he still, I think, could be a big impact receiver for this program. But you would have loved to get him on campus for spring ball. But if the plan was all along that you knew he had to finish out the semester and he was going to not come until summer, then I don't think the coaches are really worried about it.
Right. And I'm not as concerned with Bo Collins as I am with Riley Leonard, because the mental rep thing, I'm a person who reads body language, and I don't like Marcus's body language when he talks about Riley not being able to take reps, and
Yeah,
especially with the new offensive coordinator. And then I heard Marcus mention CJ Carr had a really good day in practice the other
yeah,
day.
absolutely. Yeah, he looked really good in the scrimmage they had last weekend, I believe it was. Um, I've heard nothing but really good things about this kid. He's a 4-star freshman coming in. He came in just before bowl practice. Wasn't able to obviously play in the bowl game or anything like that, but he was with the team taking reps and in practice, probably running scout team, things like that. So I think that's really good. He is, obviously you look at that quarterback room right now, right? You got Riley Leonard's injured. You got Steve Angeli, who threw 2 picks on Saturday, and then you have Kenny Minchie, who threw a pick 6. So of the 4 quarterbacks that are, on scholarship at the program, CJ Carr looked by far the best Saturday. Now, obviously, Riley Leonard didn't play. So, but everything I've read about the kid is he is a student of the game, man. He loves football. He wants to learn football. So coming in, I don't think, the playbook or learning the system and things like that were ever going to be a problem. He's a hard worker. He's one of the first kids in the building, they said. And he actually, so for the past 4 years, he's been working with a private quarterback coach down in Jacksonville, Florida, who I actually know a little bit, was the quarterback coach at St. Augustine for a while. His name's Will Hewlett, who was actually he's trained quite a few NFL quarterbacks. So he's most known for training Brock Purdy, and then he actually trained top 5 pick Anthony Richardson, and then this year he trained Caleb Williams. So he's got a pedigree of putting in some pretty good NFL quarterbacks. And his quote was about CJ Carr was, the kid, he's kind of just the unicorn that you're looking for. He's got a quick release. He knows the game. He loves the game, whether it's learning why a throw didn't go where it should have or why he should have thrown it to a place different. He's always learning quick, and he doesn't make the same mistake twice. And all the coaches have talked really highly of him. So I think he's definitely got a potential to be a really great future college football quarterback and maybe even NFL quarterback. But he's a true freshman, and he's not going to be the guy this year.
So we could potentially have Notre Dame's first develop kind of like stopgap to where they do not have to hit the portal and try to bring somebody in, because I don't think that the system is flawed when it comes to the portal, but the first time you swing and miss is going to be a huge issue, and it's going to set your program back, because if you take Ohio State into account, they went out and got Will Howard. If Will Howard's a miss and Devin Brown ain't the guy, it's going to be a long year in Columbus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the hope. So Notre Dame prioritized recruiting CJ Carr over 5-star Dante Moore, who was a year old. So they obviously saw something in CJ Carr that they thought he was a better prospect than Dante Moore, which who knows? But I do believe that the staff at Notre Dame and everybody I've talked to and all the people that I've read about and things like that believe that CJ Carr has the opportunity to be kind of the next Brady Quinn, if you say, like somebody that goes to Notre Dame and actually continues to develop and becomes a 2 or 3 year starter there, which, as much as the transfer portal has become kind of the identity of college football, and it's a great way to bolster your roster, that's not going to be a sustainable model to win year in and year out. I think Ohio State will be a great case study on how it is. Now, the thing Ohio State has going for them is they have top 5 recruiting classes every year. So they're not going out in the portal and rebuilding an entire roster. They're picking up integral pieces to take their roster to the next level. And that might be a quarterback for them this year in Will Howard, but they don't go out there and get starting quarterback, starting running back, starting receiver, 3 starting linemen. Like they go out there, they get a piece here, a piece there, and then they have guys that they've recruited, highly recruited guys that do it. Notre Dame, I think, is trying to do the same thing. I think when Marcus took over, I don't think they had the talent at quarterback that he wanted. So he's had to go out in the portal each year until he starts getting his recruits at quarterback that he wants and that he thinks are the guy. And I think CJ Carr could be the first one that lands and hits and becomes that.
Right, and I think CJ Carr is going to be the first real prospect Notre Dame has had at quarterback in some time, and I like to see what this kid can do in the event that Riley Leonard can't go for some reason. Could we be looking at CJ Carr starting?
I don't think so. As much as I read about how good he's doing, how great he's doing, you have to understand this kid's doing it a lot of times against second and third string defenses. He's a true freshman. He's still going to make mistakes. We'll see how he does Saturday in the spring game. I think that'll be the first. Now, obviously, you all know spring games are for the fans, so you're not going to get a good look at anything real. You'll get a look at him because he's a young kid. They're not going to play Angeli and Minchie that much because they don't want to risk further injury. And they also, those guys are a little older. They don't need the reps as much, and you're not trying to show off what your offense can do for everybody to watch the film. But CJ Carr is going to go out there Saturday. It'll be his first time in front of Notre Dame Stadium. So they'll have, probably 40, 50, 60,000 plus in the stadium. And it'll be his first time taking live bullets in that stadium. And we saw it last weekend at Ohio State with Julian Sain. Julian didn't look bad, but man, he did not look like everybody was talking him up to be all spring. He looked like a freshman out there. He made a lot of freshman mistakes. He threw a couple picks. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see CJ Carr go out there, maybe throw an interception or two, look like he's not 100% sure of what to do each play, maybe throw the ball a little sooner than he needs to because he's nervous his protection is going to break down, even though it's not. Check down before he lets routes develop. There's young kid things that they do all the time. And I think that's why even if Riley Leonard can't go, I wouldn't anticipate CJ Carr being the starter week one. Now, you get past the Texas A&M game and you start looking down the schedule, maybe week 5, 6, CJ Carr's come along. He's got some reps in some games that they were able to win easily because they had some, had some lesser opponents, and he's gotten some live game reps and he looks good. And Riley Leonard's still dealing with an injury, then yeah, maybe you put CJ Carr out there, especially if you've lost a game or two already. But I wouldn't think he's in line to be the starter if Riley can't go. And I honestly don't believe Riley won't be the starter week one. I think he'll be back. I think he'll be healthy. And I wouldn't anticipate seeing CJ at all this year, unless it's blowouts and things like that. But at most, he'll play in 3 or 4 games just to keep that extra year of eligibility.
Right. I think you use a year on him if you're not going to. And, for the most part, Riley had the high ankle sprain, and, that they I believe they had surgery to clean some stuff up in there. And
yeah, he's actually had 2 surgeries on it this offseason. So it obviously had some scar tissue issues in the process. And high ankle sprains are weird. They can take, 6 weeks. Sometimes they can take 6 months, and you just have to figure it out. You got to let it heal. You can't push it too fast. And so that's what I'm hoping they're doing. I'm hoping that his high ankle sprain is pretty much healed. He's pretty much recovered from the surgery, and, hopefully he can go out there and be ready come fall camp.
Right. Some breaking news. J.K. Dobbins to the Chargers, I guess, what Richie's saying.
All right. Look at that. The booger eater went out and got himself a Buckeye running back.
Yeah, that guy is
No, I think that fits JK though, because they have Eckler still, right? Or did they get rid of Eckler? I can't remember now.
Eckler's gone.
Yeah, so JK I think could be a similar back to Eckler. He's not quite as shifty, maybe, and maybe a little more strength in his running game. But the biggest thing for him, and the reason I think he's similar to Eckler, is can they stay healthy? I mean, J.K. Dobbins could have been a great running back in Baltimore, but he was injured the whole time. So
right.
You never know. Hopefully, I hope for J.K. Dobbins' sake that works out.
And yeah, I hope so as well. And we will
But
kick
just
this.
just to circle back to the CJ Carr thing, I do think you'll see he will get a lot of reps Saturday, and I think the only way you burn his red shirt this year is if you see enough from him this offseason that you know he's going to be kind of a 3-and-done guy where and obviously Riley gets injured and can't play, where he's leaving after his third year no matter what to go to the NFL, then it doesn't matter if you redshirt him, right? So you'd have to know the kid, know what his values are before you burn that red shirt, but I don't foresee that happening.
Yeah, that's also that's a huge decision that has to be made, mid-season, because you run the risk because you don't want to get into a Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord situation.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother thing
Well,
that we could spend a lot of time on.
but
But yes,
we're
I
not
understand what you're saying.
we're not diving into the Ohio
No,
State rabbit hole today.
no.
It just I think that's a huge mid-season decision that Marcus Freeman has to make
Well,
down the road.
hopefully he doesn't, right? Hopefully Riley's healthy week 1 and Riley stays healthy all year. Then you don't have to make the decision unless Riley goes out and looks like shit. Then you got a decision to make, I guess. But no, hopefully Riley Leonard's healthy and Riley Leonard's quarterback 1 the entire year. Then there's no decision. You can play CJ Carr a couple games in blowouts and get him some experience and then keep his red shirt and then get him ready to maybe take over next year if he can take a big leap from year 1 to year 2.
Because with all signs leading, it's going to be him and Angeli battling next year for the starting job.
Yeah, with Kenny Minchie is kind of a long shot, but yeah, it'll be those 3 guys, I believe, battling it out. I think Steve Angeli has kind of the leg up. I believe he's going to be the backup this year, but CJ Carr I think is a much more promising prospect. So if he can make the jump and Angeli doesn't improve, I think you'll have a true quarterback competition. And don't forget, there's still going to be transfers. They're going to go out in the portal and they'll add some depth. And then obviously recruiting, they'll probably bring in a recruit or 2. So it'll still be a loaded room with a lot of competition, which I think in the quarterback room, you want that. I don't like stale quarterback rooms unless you have somebody like Quinn Ewers, who is a bona fide probable top 5 NFL draft pick who started for a year or 2. And then I'm okay with not having a competition.
Right. And, I echo that sentiment. Changing gears a little bit, this was something that I put in the notes. Coming into this season, is Notre Dame overhyped, or are they overdue for a playoff run?
Well, yes. I don't know. I mean, define overhyped. What do you believe their hype is right now?
Because I think and this is part of the next topic too. I think a lot of people in the Notre Dame stratosphere, I know you're not and I'm not, they're glossing over Texas A&M.
Yeah, I understand that. And we'll jump into the Texas A&M game and kind of break it down a little bit here in a minute, but I think when you look at what, hype, right? Is Notre Dame overhyped? I don't hear a whole lot of people outside of, Notre Dame circles talking about Notre Dame a whole lot. And I don't hear a lot of people mentioning them with programs like Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, the top tier programs, which is understandable. They've underperformed. So I don't know if I would say they're overhyped. I mean, they're over under for wins right now is 10.5 on the season, which sounds like a really high amount, right? So you could say maybe they are overhyped, but we'll also, go through the schedule here shortly and we can kind of break down what we think. But if you look at the past, I don't know, let's say since 2012, right? We'll go back to 2010, right? So that's 13 years. They've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons where they've exceeded 10.5 wins. So 6 seasons out of 14. And, obviously majority of those, all except for the past 2, were with Brian Kelly, who, all in all I guess overproduced is, I won't say that. He was a solid coach. But Marcus has not gone over 10.5 in his 2 years, and he has a lot of losses that are questionable, right? So I don't know if I would say they're overhyped. I think they are probably properly evaluated. When we go through their schedule, I'll kind of tell you where I see them win-wise, and I think 10.5 is not a bad line. It is all dependent on that quarterback position, and we'll go through what I think of the defense as well. But just to give you an idea as well, Notre Dame is also plus 2,500 to win the national championship this year. Now, where do you think that ranks? Plus 2,500.
I would say best odds. Best odds got to be Georgia. I would say Georgia 1.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it's Georgia and Ohio State at number 1 and 2. But if you had to take a guess, like top 20, top 10, top 50, like what do you think 2,500 is?
2,500 has to be at least top 20. Top
10. It's top 10. They have the 10th best to win the national championship according to Vegas. And they're tied at 2,500 with Penn State. So I don't think that's overhyped. I think that's accurate. If I look at, the schools ahead of them, I think those schools are ahead of them as far as the chances to win the national championship. I think you look at Notre Dame's schedule, I think 10.5 is probably a pretty good line. They'll be flirting with it, in my opinion. And if I compare them to the school that they're tied with for the best odds to win the Natty, Penn State, I think they're very similar programs, and they're at a very similar place right now, which Notre Dame fans might not like hearing that, because Penn State doesn't, I don't care what anybody tells you, Penn State doesn't have the program tradition that Notre Dame has. But I believe they're at similar places right now. The only difference is Marcus Freeman is I'll say less proven, and what I mean by that is he hasn't been around as long as James Franklin, but James Franklin's proven that he can't win big games. He can't beat Ohio State or Michigan. He can't win a Big Ten title. He can't win a bowl game. So I think I would give the edge to Notre Dame in the coaching department right now, just because I'd rather have a little bit of an unknown as a head coach than a guy that I know what to expect, and that's going to be 10-2 with losses to Ohio State and Michigan every year. Right. I don't think they're overhyped. I do think they're overdue for a playoff run. Now, it's hard to say that because this is the first time that we're going to have the 12-team playoff. They made the 2-team play or the 4-team playoff twice, I believe. And so I don't know if I'd say they're overdue because, the 4-team playoff was around for 10 years, and they went 2 or 3 times. So 20-30%. I mean, that's more than most programs not named Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. So I think they've made the playoffs plenty of times. But I think they're due to get into this playoff format, 12 teams, hopefully get in as like a 5 or 6 seed and have a home playoff game, win that playoff game, do something they haven't done yet, which is win a playoff game, and then go out there and hopefully win a second round playoff and then get into that Final Four and earn their way in. I think that would be a solid playoff run this year. But I go back. It all depends on that quarterback position.
Right. And real quick here, for everybody watching in the chat, if you're watching on Twitter or on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button, please, because it helps grow this show. And if you guys like talking Notre Dame football like we do, help us out a little bit.
Absolutely. And real quick, put it in the chat. Let me know what you guys think. You guys think 10.5? You guys taking the over or the under right now?
Yeah, that 10.5, and to me, it's also it's a very fine line that you're towing here when it comes to the 10.5.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's jump into their schedule. You can break it down a little bit.
Okay, so, the the big game that is circled for me, Richie says he's taking the over.
All right, I like it.
Richie, longtime supporter, taking the
Absolutely,
over.
man. My guy Richie.
Um,
I might be seeing Richie at Yogi's here next week or something. He said he's coming down to Dublin, so might have to hit up Yogi's with him.
nice. I was there this past weekend, and Columbus is a fun time. We got to see Frank Meyer while we were there.
Frank Meyer. Yep, we did. Him and Corey Dennis.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you look at their schedule, I'll go game by game and I'll give you my thoughts, and then we can kind of break down what you think the best games are. So obviously week 1, you got Texas A&M, which after we go through the schedule, I want to kind of break down that game and talk specifics about it. But Texas A&M at Kyle Field, first week of the season, August 31st, breaking in a new quarterback, 3 new linemen. That's going to be a really tough game. I don't care what anybody thinks or tells you, that's going to be a battle. Texas A&M is going to be, I think, a pretty solid team this year. They have a lot of really tough matchups, so they might end up with 3 or 4 losses. But I think that's maybe my biggest question mark coming into the year is that game. I wouldn't be shocked if Notre Dame went out and won that game. I think they have the talent to do it. If Riley Leonard is healthy and they can make sure not to have mental mistakes, unforced errors, and turnovers, which that's every game, I guess. But I think that game specifically, especially in an environment like Kyle Field, the house that Johnny Manziel built, I think that you're going to go out there and it's going to be a battle. But if I had to pick right now, I think I'm giving them an L in that game. I think I'm going to give them an L, call it 24-21, something like that, a close game. But I'll give them an L there. So starting off 0-1 is going to be tough. You're going to see how your team responds pretty quickly. Good news for them is after that they have NIU at home, which I'll give that a W. I think there's, I think this is the year Marcus Freeman has to step up and win the games that are supposed to be wins, right? Make the layups, right? If it's a layup, you got to make it. So I think NIU, he gets that done. So there's one win. Then he's going to go at Purdue. Purdue, in my opinion, is still Purdue. So I'm going to give it a W there. Then he's got Miami at home. Miami of Ohio. Sorry, don't want to confuse people. Miami of Ohio at home is a W, I believe. Then they got Louisville at home, which Louisville is going to be decent this year. They're returning decent talent. I think Notre Dame goes out and kind of avenges that loss from last year, though. It's in Notre Dame, so I think that game is going to be a good environment. Notre Dame Stadium is always fun to play in and a great place to play. So I'll give them a win there. Then they have Stanford, which I know Stanford sometimes is sneaky good and just sneaks up on you. But I don't think that happens this year. Give them a W there. At Georgia Tech, I'm not big on Georgia Tech. I think they'll get that one done. W there. Versus Navy. Navy's always a tough game. Those academies, those military academies always run weird offenses, and they're always way closer than you expect. But it's in East Rutherford, New Jersey at MetLife Stadium. I believe that is the Shamrock Series this year. And Notre Dame has a pretty good record in the Shamrock Series, I believe. So I'll go ahead and give it a W there as well. Then you're going to talk about one of the biggest games of the season, depending on how this team does throughout their first 8 games. It's going to be Florida State, November 9th at Notre Dame. Now, if you go through the history of Florida State, Notre Dame, these are some of the most entertaining games ever. You talk about, I would give that, I would give that probably a 90% chance that it's going to be a night game. It's going to be at Notre Dame Stadium. You're going to have the Catholics versus the Criminals was Miami, but Florida State's not much different. So, and you're going to have a crazy environment. I think Cam Ward is probably going to be on a heater at that point. And you're going to have 2 teams battling it out with very different styles. I think Florida State's going to be more of a flashy offense, more of a, put points on the board team, where Notre Dame, I think, is going to be more of a grind offense and rely on the defense team. So I think that'll be a really entertaining game. I would go ahead and probably book that one as an L right now. I don't know what the spread is currently. I'm sure Notre Dame probably is like a 1.5 point favorite because it's at Notre Dame. I just think Florida State, if everything goes right in their early games, I think they'll come in really hot and have a lot of momentum. So I'll go ahead and give it an L there. And then rebounding the following week, they have Virginia at home, which Virginia to me is a W. And then you finish up the year at USC. I believe USC is going to be down this year. I don't think they're going to be a great program, and that's the game, right? That's Notre Dame's version of the game. So the entire year comes down to that game for Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman has a good record against USC. I think he goes out and I think he gets that W right there as well. So that puts them at, I believe, 10-2 for me. So that's right there flirting with that 10.5 wins that I said.
Right. In a correction, you were talking FSU Cam Ward. It's DJU.
Oh, that's what I meant. Cam Ward went to what, Miami?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. DJ. That's what I meant. But
not the.
No, you're right. I meant DJU because I think DJU is going to have a really good year there because I believe he got absolutely fucked at Clemson. They didn't do shit for him. And then he went to Oregon State, had a pretty solid year. And I think Florida State has proven that they can, take quarterbacks and produce good years. Jordan Travis had a great year last year as a transfer quarterback. So I have no doubt that DJU will have a good year.
Going forward, and the Shamrock Series this year is November 23rd against Army at Yankee Stadium.
Okay. That one wasn't on my list for some reason.
That was not on your bingo card.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even on the schedule that I downloaded. That's weird. But yeah, I think they'll beat Army as well. So, that's right. At Yankee Stadium. I did know that. But
I hate to do it like this, but on Texas A&M,
mm-hmm.
I'll start at the beginning because I was while you were going through yours, I was writing mine out.
Yeah.
I think the way the Texas A&M game goes is how the season is going to go. Essentially, in my opinion, because Marcus Freeman has talked about they are a team built on the trench. Offensive, defensive line, and setting a tone and bringing a physicality, a nastiness to the game. If Notre Dame can go on the road and win at, I believe it's going to be high noon at Texas A&M in August, the last week of August, you go down there and you beat those guys in their place, and Elko's defense is going to be. I get it. It's going to be his first year, but he's going to have some dudes. If he got some dudes into Duke, what do you think he's going to do with unlimited resources and in the midnight yells down there at Texas A&M, which I think it's a cult down there, but that's another conversation for a different day. And I see a lot of other podcasts out there talking like they're glossing over Texas A&M, and A&M is nobody to play with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. I agree with what you're saying as far as setting the tone for the season. I'll push back on one thing. I think if they win, it absolutely sets the tone for the season. I think if they lose, I think depending on how they lose, if they go get blown out, that could set a bad tone for the season. But if they lose a close game at Kyle Field, in that first week with a new quarterback, new coordinator, I think the message is going to be, guys, it's a long season, 12-team playoff. We got everything in front of us. We can get by. And I think Marcus is the type of guy that can rally that locker room around him and can get them back on track. He's done it every year when they've had losses that they shouldn't have had. He's been able to finish out, decently strong. But I think, if I'm Marcus Freeman and going into that game, you have to fucking nut up and talk to your men like men. You have to look at them and tell them This is how we set the tone. This is where we show people who the fuck Notre Dame is. Go out there, hit them square in the jaw, put them in their place, and fucking show toughness. If we're a team built in the trenches, go out there and be fucking tough. And if that's the way they go out there, and they go out there hitting, and they go out there making plays, I think it could be a long day for Texas A&M. But if they come in timid, if they come in, trying to finesse it, trying to just not lose, it's going to be a tough matchup. And so I don't disagree at all that it could set the tone for the year. And I think, and I'll say, if they go out there and they win week 1, if they win in any sort of dominating fashion by 10 points or more, I'm telling you right now, I might put money on it. I think Notre Dame runs the table if they do that. If they go out there, they punch them in the face, they go out there and show Notre Dame is here to fucking compete on the biggest stage in college football, and they go out there and they play a pretty flawless game, I think they carry that momentum with them through the entire season. And as long as they don't get derailed by injuries or something like that, I think they run the table. They run through the entire scope of their schedule. They're gonna have another tough one in Florida State, and then USC is never easy. USC is the one that I have circled every year. If you don't go out and beat USC, I don't really care what you did the rest of the year. But I think you just have to nut up, man. You have to go out there and you have to tell them, listen, man, this is what we're here for. You came to Notre Dame for moments like this. This is what we're playing for. Let's go out there. Let's get the job done. And let's start our march onto the playoffs. And let's show them that, you know what, Notre Dame's back for real.
And in moving on down the schedule, like is with you, and I totally agree with that, because they have got to establish a toughness. This is a different type of Notre Dame team, built on physicality, not finesse, like Brian Kelly.
Well, yeah, and I think if it is that, which is what we are told it is, then you got to go out and show it.
100%. And then moving down the schedule, Notre Dame's at home against Northern. I got that checked off as in the W column, and I'll pencil it in now as A&M as a W.
Okay.
Purdue is Purdue, but the caveat is I consider that a 50-50 game, the Texas A&M game.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It's a 50-50. So, and it's probably, I could argue that outside of USC and Florida State is probably the biggest game. It's got an argument because week 1 sets a tone.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Those are by far the 3 biggest games they have. Now, they can't overlook anybody and get sloppy, but those 3 games are going to determine the season.
Yes, and then Miami of Ohio, that's a W. And then the game that nobody is going to talk about that I do not like on this schedule is Louisville at Notre Dame Stadium, because I think Brom can coach some football.
Yeah, I agree. I just think after what happened to Notre Dame last year in the Louisville game, after coming out with, I think it was their 4th straight night game on prime time, and they lose the way they did to Louisville, got manhandled. Marcus Freeman has that one circled. He knows that game cannot be overlooked.
So I think Notre Dame gets it done there. And then I did look up the betting odds on Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M
minus 1.5, right?
Yep. Yeah. A&M minus 1.5. So we will continue to monitor that going forward. Stanford, that's a home game. Stanford, I don't think they got the dogs. A lot of kids transferred out after that really good game, that comeback victory in Colorado. And then you've got Georgia Tech, which this game is interesting to me because it's not at Tech, it's in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah.
So it's on
it's not a neutral site, but yeah, they do that because they know Notre Dame travels, man. They need to put it in the big show. They get a chance to have Notre Dame in Atlanta. They're going to put them in Mercedes-Benz.
And then another neutral site game is Navy,
Mm-hmm.
and I've counted those last two as W's, and
Okay.
then a 50-50 game is Florida State
Yep, I agree with that.
because Florida State, all their struggles
Mm-hmm.
the last 2 years with Florida State have came on the road. Like Clemson had them on the ropes last year. If Klubnik
Yeah.
doesn't have that strip sack, if he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get strip sacked, uh, uh,
Yeah.
Clemson wins that game, and also
Mm-hmm.
cost me a little loot in the pocket that week.
Yeah,
So
and then nobody's upset when Florida State doesn't get into the playoffs.
exactly, because they would have had one loss and it would all worked out, and it would have just been fantastic.
Thanks a lot, Dabo.
Yeah,
But anyways, continue.
but I have a lot on that situation, but we'll save that for another day. Florida State to me is a 50-50 game,
Mm-hmm.
and if Notre Dame comes out and can dominate like I think they can,
Yeah.
because Florida State's going to have a brand new starting quarterback in going to South Bend in early November on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You could potentially be looking at a night game.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I believe it will be. I think especially if both teams come in undefeated or with one loss, and there's no reason it won't be.
Because Notre Dame's going to be ranked in what, top 15?
Probably, yeah.
In good end, probably top 10.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, yeah,
I would think, being realistically, I think Notre Dame's ceiling is probably number 10, and Florida State's going to be probably 7 or 8.
probably. I mean, if they're both undefeated, I think you'll see them both top 10.
So potentially, if everything rolls out the way I think it could roll out, you could potentially have, like a 6 versus a 3, somewhere in that realm
Yeah.
of a huge rank game at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the year. And since it's at home, I like Notre
Mm-hmm.
Dame to win that game.
Yeah, I think. I mean, like you said, I think it's 50-50 right now. Obviously, this is all before we even see fall camp, before we see any games. So it could all change by the time November 9th rolls around. But yeah, I agree. I think it's 50-50. I think Notre Dame has the edge because it's at home. But I think Florida State has the playmakers and the athletes to give Notre Dame problems if they aren't on their game.
And there's just something about playing in South Bend that there's a mystique and some
Well,
things.
you look up and there's touchdown Jesus right there. What do you mean? Of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's a mystique, man. You got the grotto, the dome, touchdown Jesus, rubbing Newt Rockney's nose. I mean, there's no place like South Bend, Indiana, man.
And yes, that is a true statement. And strange things happen there when you're a highly ranked team. Strange things happen there. Ask Jimmy Johnson about that.
Yes, sir.
Some people call it a bad call, but the ref made a call. Sorry, Miami. Things happened.
Catholics get the benefit of the doubt over criminals. All right.
That is a true statement. Army Shamrock Series. I think that's going to be really cool to see Notre Dame and Army square off in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I agree.
If it wasn't
I will
close,
say I hate football games in baseball stadiums. They're never good. Like the games are fine, but like if you go to one, you have terrible view of the field. It's awkward. I don't like them, but it'll be a cool environment, on TV where I'll be watching it from. I'm not going to fucking New York City, that's for sure. It'll be cool. But yeah.
I'm out. I wouldn't even. I think Northwestern plays Ohio State at Wrigley this year.
Yeah.
It.
And Wrigley might be the worst to play a football game in.
I'm just. Yeah. Why do we build football stadiums? That is the question. But anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on, rivalry weekend, the biggest game on the year. I have Notre Dame going undefeated up until this point, and this is the game out of every game I feel more confident playing Florida State at home than I do going on the road to
Ooh,
SC.
that's a take right there, man. I don't disagree. I just think SC's has a lot of unknowns. Um, and I'll be honest, Lincoln Riley, not a real good track record against Notre Dame.
No, and
And
I'm gonna.
if their magic man or magic woman, Caleb, couldn't get it done last year and threw 3 picks in 7 minutes or whatever, I don't know if their quarterback this year will be able to do it. So we'll see. But continue. Tell me why do you think it's such a? I agree. I don't think it's a gimme. I'm not picking Notre Dame to win big, but I feel pretty confident Notre Dame can go out to Los Angeles and get that done.
I guess I might be the first person to put it on wax this year, but I have Notre Dame as a 12-0
Ooh,
regular season.
look at that! I love it, dog. Yeah. Listen, there's definitely a possibility that happens. Their schedule sets up pretty nicely for them. Kind of they get a bye week before Florida State, which is huge. That helps. So we'll see. I definitely think that's possible, and I haven't seen anybody do it since 2018 when Brian Kelly went 12-0 in the regular season and then lost in the playoffs. But I think they have the talent to do it. It's all going to come down to that quarterback position, man. If Riley Leonard comes in and is what Notre Dame thinks he can be, they have an opportunity to do it. If he comes in and struggles, it's going to be tough to get out of there 10-2.
I think the big thing that Notre Dame is going to need, like you said, is the production side of the quarterback play, because it is just too inconsistent right now, and I think their two biggest games are SC and A&M because they're both on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And so I broke down that A&M game a little bit, just kind of digging into it, because obviously week 1, that's going to be the first time you see this Notre Dame team on the field outside of this Saturday in the spring game. And so if you look at it, man, and this is what makes me go back and forth with it. Obviously, right now we talked about it. A&M's 1.5-point favorite going into the season at this point, barring any massive injuries in the offseason. And then if I broke it down like this. So I look at preseason and looking at games, first thing I look at is returning players. Notre Dame's returning 8 starters on defense, including the Nagurski Award winner Xavier Watts. They also added R.J. Oben, who is the 6th best ranked edge rusher in the transfer portal from Duke, and Jordan Clark, who is the 10th best safety from Arizona State. So they're bringing back 8 starters, added 2 established transfers that are good players. I mean, they weren't All-Americans, they weren't Caleb Downs, but they were good players, productive players at the previous schools that can come in and can give Notre Dame a boost on the defensive side. So that's the good news for Notre Dame. Their defense is coming back. Their defense was good last year. It's coming back for the most part. They lost some decent key players, but they're bringing in a lot of their secondary back. They're bringing back some linebackers, and they also added a couple pieces. Now, on the flip side, on the offensive side, they're only returning 5 starters, which includes both the guards. So you lost a lot of skill players. You lost Sam Hartman. You lost, uber talented top 5 pick Joe Alt. You lost your leading rusher in Audric Estime, just to name a few. So a lot of your production has left from that offense. You look at A&M, they're breaking in a new coach in Mike Elko, his first year. Obviously, in his 2 years at Duke, had a really good run there. He is 0-1 versus Marcus Freeman at Duke. So I don't know how much that plays a role in this game. But the good news for A&M is they're returning 72% of their production from 2023, which ranks 18th nationally. And you alluded to it earlier in the show. Notre Dame's returning production ranks around 75th. So A&M's returning a lot more production than than Notre Dame is. Now, if you look at recruiting rankings and kind of what's coming in, which won't play a huge role in this game, there might be some freshmen that get on the field for each team, like a Micah Gilbert, who's probably going to get some snaps at wide receiver for Notre Dame. But Notre Dame's freshman class was ranked 9th in the country, as opposed to A&M was 19th. So there's not a huge gap there, right? But you look at the returning production, look at new coaches. Well, Notre Dame has a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback. A&M has a new head coach and is implementing new systems. It's a new program, new regime. So I think that makes it a very even match, and which is probably why Vegas has the line at -1.5. I think the biggest thing that it's going to come down to is how dominant can this Notre Dame defense be? If this Notre Dame defense can go out there and hold Texas A&M to 17 points, Notre Dame's got a great chance to win this game. If Notre Dame's defense struggles, I'm not sure I trust Notre Dame's offense with the playmakers they have at receiver, breaking in not necessarily new running backs, but, they lost their leading rusher, and Riley Leonard's first game under center as a Notre Dame player. So I think it comes down to Notre Dame's defense. If that defense can go out and be the dominant force that I think it can, possibly a top 5 defense in the country, I think Notre Dame's got a great shot to win the game, which is why I put it at a 50-50, and I'm very hesitant to pick it. But that's kind of my breakdown of it and kind of what I see. The good news is I think Notre Dame's secondary is elite. I think they have really great secondary players, great corners, good safety play. I think their front four is going to be solid. They're really good in the trenches most of the time. So if they can slow down the running attack and get pressure on the quarterback with a 4-man rush, they're going to have an excellent chance of shutting down that Texas A&M offense, which is, I think, the key to getting that win.
Right. And with all that being said, the returning production and things of that sort where these guys rank, I also whenever I look at games, I think there's going to be a certain emotion that rolls into this, because you got to remember it's Mike Elko versus Riley Leonard.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I don't think we can rule out a Mike Elko game plan, and I think that's why I think this game is so big, and it's nothing personal between them two.
No,
Mike Elko was leaving, and Riley Leonard decided to hit the portal.
Yeah, so they're both out. Yeah, no, I agree, but there's a familiarity there, right? They know each other. Obviously, they coached. He coached them. He's more of a defensive guy, but he worked with him. He was involved with them. So I definitely think that plays a role. I do think when it comes to coaches coaching against players that used to play for them, I don't think it's a huge advantage because they're not doing what they did in your system. They're not doing what they did at your program. Now, you might know some tendencies from him, like, oh, if he does this, he most likely is going to go here, or know what he looks like or know how to rattle him, which can be a mental part of the game that can affect it. But I wouldn't put too much stock in that. I think the bigger matchup is Mike Elko versus Marcus Freeman, because those are two highly intelligent head coaches with great defensive schemes, and it's going to be a chess match between them all game. It was last year in the Duke game versus Notre Dame. It was a back and forth, and I remember that. I remember it like it was yesterday, man. I was on a golf trip in Ogle Bay, watching this game at the lodge after I just played 36 holes. It was one of the best days of my life. But went in, and 31 seconds left, Audrek Estime goes off and scores a touchdown to put them up 20 to 19-14, went for 2 and got it, 21-14 with 30 seconds left. No Riley Leonard because somebody stepped on his ankle or he twisted it or whatever. And I think you're going to get one of those kind of classic defensive battles between these two. And if I had to guess, so the good news for Notre Dame, I told you Texas A&M is returning 72% of their production. That's a average of the offensive and defensive production. The good news is 77% of their production comes from offense. Only 67% comes from defense. So their defense isn't returning as much production, which I think is going to be the key to this game is the defenses. So I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I'm really, really pumped to watch it. And I think at the end of the day, whoever goes out there and is able to win the turnover battle and is able to slow down the offenses, I don't know if either one of them is going to have a high-powered offense all year, but I know they have playmakers. I know they have quarterbacks that, if they're on their game, can be good. So I don't know. I the more I talk about it, man, I picked Texas A&M to win when I went through the schedule. The more I talk about it, I think Notre Dame can get this one. The only reason I picked Texas A&M is because it's the first week of the season with a new quarterback, a new coordinator, and it's at Texas A&M, Kyle Field. But I think if they can slow down the offense enough, limit any mistakes so that 12th man at Texas A&M doesn't get super involved, because if you're at a college football game and it's 10-7 for 30 minutes straight and really nothing's going on but punts, that crowd isn't into it. So you just you can't give up explosive plays. You can't turn the ball over, and that'll limit the crowd's impact on the game. If they can do that, they can go out and they can win that game for sure.
Right on. And that's why I think that game is pivotal, and that's why I think the USC game's pivotal, because I think the issue I have with A&M is because they're kind of a mystery, even though it's going to be a schematically different team from Jimbo to Elko.
Oh, for
and
sure.
I think USC is going to be a schematically different team, because I feel like there was things in the inner workings of that program, the goings on, as some people would say.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. So with USC, at least, I agree completely. Texas A&M is going to be a schematically different team. I think they have the athletes to fit a lot of different schemes, so I'm not too concerned about that being a negative impact on them. As far as USC goes, their offense is Lincoln Riley's offense. It's going to be Lincoln Riley's offense. That's not going to change. They might throw in some different wrinkles. It's no different than Ryan Day hiring Chip Kelly. It's still going to be Ryan Day's offense. They're just going to use some of Chip Kelly's schemes and wrinkles, but it's going to look pretty similar. Even, I mean, if you watch Ohio State's spring game, it looked pretty similar to what Ryan's done the past 5 years, right? I mean, they threw in some wrinkles with 2 running backs and things like that Chip definitely brought, but I think that's what you're going to get from Lincoln Riley. It's going to be Lincoln Riley's offense. Now, on the defensive side of thing, they better hope it's a completely different scheme, because everything they've ever done under Lincoln Riley, and even before him at USC, hasn't worked. So I don't know if you run a bear 5 defensive linemen, like I don't know what you do, but you got to change it. And I don't believe Lincoln Riley has the chops or the balls to change the defense himself, or to find a Jim Knowles that can change the defense. So I'm not, and again, maybe I'm just, got Kelly Green colored glasses on, right? And I just think, man, USC isn't back. It's not there. And I don't have a whole lot of faith in Lincoln Riley to figure out how to put a defense on the field that's championship level. He hasn't done it his entire career. At Oklahoma, he made the playoffs, almost beat Georgia in like a 56-51 game because he can't stop anybody. And same thing at USC. He hasn't put together a defense ever. And so until he puts that defense on the field, I heard last year how improved USC's defense was going to be, and it looked like shit. So until he goes out there and shows me, I'm not going to be worried about it.
And that's the biggest issue that comes in predicting these 2 games, because you've got 2 programs, and this will be my final thought for the evening. You've got 2 programs with USC, Texas A&M. The last 3 years, people, and this is something that Josh Pate was saying. The last 3 years, and I totally agree with him, that people have been telling you how good Texas A&M is going to be, and they've been mediocre.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and my thing is that if you're Texas A&M and you want to be relevant and you want to do things in the SEC, you want to compete for a national championship, you've got to beat Notre Dame at home. And the same thing with Lincoln Riley. You want to take the next step, you want an NFL job, you don't want to recruit no more, beat Notre Dame and
Hmm.
have a respectable defense, because Lincoln Riley is one side of the ball dominant coach. And I get it, he's an offensive mind. And some of the stuff that I watched last year when it came to USC, I thought their offense looked stagnant and I don't think there was much evolving.
Hmm.
And I echo the sentiment of Zach Smith from Menace to Sports. It's one of the things he brought up. He said, it was a lazy game plan.
No, I agree completely. And if you look at it, man, and this is why I don't have a whole lot of belief in Lincoln Riley as far as the defense goes, is because you look at who is defensive coordinator over the past few years, right? Alex Grinch. I'm sorry, and I know Zach talks about Alex Grinch a lot, and Zach likes him and thinks that he's a good mind and a good coach. Alex Grinch was garbage at Oklahoma, and then was garbage at USC. So what does he do? He goes out and he hires D'Anton Lynn, right? That's their D coordinator right now. You look at his resume, man. I mean, he's an NFL guy. He was with the Jets, Bills, Chargers, Texans, Ravens. And then you know where he was a defensive coordinator last year?
No idea.
UCLA under Chip Kelly. How good was that defense? It's the only defensive coordinator position he's had. He's been a secondary coach and safeties coach in the NFL for 8 years prior to that.
And I do not like defensive coordinators that do not come from playing in the box. That's just me, though.
Hey, and so, I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't know him. I don't know anything about him outside of what I'm reading on his resume. Okay, he played for the Jets. He was what position did he play? Yeah, he was a corner. That's what I thought. He was a corner at Penn State, and then he played as an undrafted free agent for the Jets. So he's a secondary guy. And I'm not saying secondary coaches don't have what it takes to be defensive coordinators. I just don't see them succeeding in that position all that often. Sometimes they do, don't get me wrong. But you look at the great defensive coordinators, a lot of them are former D linemen, linebackers, things like that, or at least have coached the front seven, right? So I don't know enough about him to make a judgment on how he is as a coach. However, looking at his background, it doesn't lead me to believe that this is going to be a successful hire. It looks like Lincoln Riley went out and got a flashy coach because that's how he runs his offense. He runs his offense from a quarterback's perspective, flashiness, right? And so when he looks for a defensive coordinator, instead of doing what a smart coach would do and look for the opposite of you that balances you, it seems like he looks for the same thing. I want a guy with crazy schemes and coverages and stuff like that. Well, that's all fine and well, but when you can't stop the run, I don't care what your zone blitz package is on 3rd and long. So we'll see, but sorry to go on a tirade. I don't believe in Lincoln Riley as a coach at this point. I believe he's a great offensive mind, and I think he might be successful in the NFL where you don't have to recruit and develop players. And maybe he would find a defensive coordinator that is an established NFL defense coordinator. I just don't see him succeeding in college at this level.
You would think we would just, look at the stat book, hit the scroll, hit the sort button and say, who are the top defensive coordinators?
Well, that's what Ryan Day did. Ryan Day said, oh, who are the top defense coordinator? Jim Knowles? I'm going to give him $2 million. Boom, done. And you can't tell me USC doesn't have the money to do that.
Yeah, and this is the absolute final thought. I am so sick of these colleges saying we don't have any money for a coach's pool. It just like,
Bro,
like
if you're at a big time
we
college, you know what you do? You call
you
your
pay people.
you call your AD and you go, hey, you know how you want me to make the playoffs? I need $2 million for Jim Knowles. And you know what the AD says? Here, let me shuffle some things around. Oh wow, we just found an extra $1.25 million to make that work.
Or hold on, let's hold a benefit. Let's hold a fundraiser.
Yeah.
Let's do something.
Yep. But
So,
anyways, so that's my thoughts on it. You know, I think there's 3 really tough games on their schedule, Notre Dame schedule. I think USC will be tough. I don't, and the good news for them is I'm not 100% sold that Notre Dame's going to have a high-powered offense, so they might be able to stick in the game a little better than if they were playing somebody with, you know, Quinn Ewers and those guys.
right on. Well, that was a pre-spring breakdown of Notre Dame, and that's going to do it for tonight. And that is Carter, and I am Andre. Everybody have a good one. Hit the like and subscribe, please. Help grow this show.
Absolutely, guys. Everybody that tuned in, hope you guys got some entertainment out of it. You know what they say, be a friend, share, tell a friend. So let everybody know, man, we're going to keep doing things. We got some exciting things on the border here. We're going to try to do some things in South Bend and in Columbus and things like that. So stay tuned and appreciate you all tuning in.
All right, everybody have a good night.